All right, good evening and welcome to bourbonblog.com. I'm talking today with Assistant Distiller at Jack Daniel's Distillery there in Lynchburg, Tennessee, Lexie Phillips. How's it going, Lexie?
Oh, it's going very good. Thanks for having me on today, Tom.
Well, you're so welcome, and it's very exciting news. What we're mainly here to talk about, but we're going to talk about a few other things relating to Jack Daniel's. It's the first ever Jack Daniel's age-dated whiskey bottle in over 100 years. It's Jack Daniel's 10 years old. Now, usually Jack Daniel's, most of the Jack Daniel's, the number 7, 4 to 5 years old, right?
It is, yep.
So this is like twice as old. I'm already sipping it. Tell me about this and what inspired this.
Oh gosh, this is such an exciting product. You know, I really think what inspired it is our history. You know, not really chasing a year, but seeing, because I mean, we have some of the bottles from Jack's day in the cabinet here in our main office. And, you know, the guys just saw that and really wanted to pay homage to the history of Jack. So why not go ahead and lay a couple hundred barrels down and just hold on to them, see what we can make out of it. And so that's really what started this. We laid down, it was actually 3 different lots of barrels. So 3 different days, if you will, of barrels. And they actually rested on the top floor of a warehouse for the majority of their life. So that's where we pull our single barrel from. And in the last about 2 years, it was right under 8 years old. We moved it down to the bottom floor of some other warehouses just to kind of slow the aging down, if you will. Think of it as like a boiling if you're cooking on the top floor and then a slow simmer when you get to the bottom floor. So I think it really, as you're already sipping, you can smell
It's
those
so
rich
nice
flavors. Gosh, it's amazing. Very exciting.
And I can tell, the nice thing is, Lexie, I know this has that Jack Daniel's DNA. It's that beautiful recipe, but the sweetness, it goes a little more in depth. It has a little bit more of that extraction, just a flavor of the wood. And so so when they laid this down 10 years ago, the intent was with these batches to make it 10 years old. I mean, this was the intent from the beginning.
Right. Now, when they actually came out with this, it was probably going on 4 or 5 years old. So that made the wait a little more manageable instead of waiting a full 10 years. But it was up in the single barrel location. And then when they actually came up with it, they let it set a little longer. And you were so right on the sweetness of it. You know, for 10 years old, I was a little afraid it'd be a little too oaky. And I do not think that took over at all. I think this is absolutely beautiful.
It's very refined. The sugars are delicate. They're pronounced in a really light way. It's just something so special that this is a limited edition. So it's either, is it out now or coming out later this month?
It should be out depending on what market you're in. You know, we just had our bottles here at the White Rabbit Bottle Shop last Friday. And so it has been seen on several liquor stores around our close market. So it should be hitting stores soon if it's not yet.
If you're a Jack Daniel's fan like I am, you don't want to miss this. This is a very special, limited edition. Again, the very first time ever in over 100 years, pre-Prohibition, that Jack has put an age statement on a bottle. Usually, again, like we said, your old number 7, 4 to 5 years old. Same with Gentleman Jack, but the Gentleman Jack has that extra filtration, right?
Absolutely. Yes. So it will be twice mellowed, going through that charcoal mellowing an additional time after maturation.
Twice mellowed. And then some of the single barrels, some of the rarer releases are 5 to 7, but this is a Jack Daniel's that like we've never had it. Frank Sinatra, remind me how old the Frank Sinatra is again?
I think it hits right around 5 to 6 years.
5 to 6 with that special barrel that brings the magic to
yes, that grooved barrel. I mean, even just the barrel itself, looking at the inside of it, looks awesome. You know it's going to be some awesome whiskey. Just exposing some more of that wood, letting those wood sugars do their job in there.
Yes. Yes, this is so unique. I really like this, Lexi. And let's just take a step back because I know there's so many fans of, bourbon on Bourbon Blog, but probably people that have, whether they're Jack Daniels fans or maybe they have it every once in a while and they think, I just know it's a good American whiskey. But tell us about the process of what makes it such a special American whiskey.
Absolutely. So, I mean, coming down here in the holler, you've got to come down and see Lynchburg if y'all haven't before. Um, we make all of our whiskey from the cave spring water, the same cave spring water that Mr. Jack used back in the day. We use all number one grains, that corn, rye, and malted barley. The really big importance of our malted barley is that we use that in place of man-made chemical or man-made enzymes. So it's very important in the mashing process to break the starches down from these grains into simple sugars that the yeast can actually eat. So the yeast is a yeast that we can actually trace back to Prohibition.
Wow.
And every week, our resident microbiologist brings us over pretty much a 9-liter jug of our yeast. And over the course of about 60 hours, we grow that up to 3,000 gallons of yeast. And then it becomes married with the mash that we made. And that's where these flavors are really born in fermentation. We use 100% copper stills. They're column style, continuous flow stills, and everything in there, every tube that whiskey goes through is 100% copper. The next step after that is the charcoal mellowing. And I know you talking about bourbon, that kind of helps because there's always the discussion of if we're a bourbon or what we really are. We are kind of Tennessee whiskey is a bourbon plus. So we meet all the requirements of bourbon. Plus, to be a Tennessee whiskey, of course, you got to be made here in Tennessee and be charcoal mellowed. So one last thing before I get too long-winded on you, the after charcoal mellowing, we actually entrust the 53 gallons into one of the barrels that we made. We are one of the very few companies that own 2 cooperages. And before that, we have 4 stave mills. So we're not buying barrels to a perfect specification. We're actually buying whole trees. And then our employees are making the specifications that we want and need. So there's several things in there that I feel like truly highlights the craft of Jack Daniels.
It really does. And of course, there are so many wonderful cooperages that we appreciate across the country and the world. But as you mentioned, being really one of the only distilleries and companies in North America that can really make those barrels the way you want to, the way they've been done for so long, plus the charcoal filtration, those yeast strains. I mean, there's a care and attention to detail that you all have been taking for a long time to give it this consistent flavor.
Absolutely. I'm going to steal a quote from Chris Fletcher, our master distiller. Once we get the grain in from our grain haulers into our facility, into our distillery, no other outside sources touch any part of that whiskey until it is bottled, however many years later. So we have control over every step of that process, and quality control that's unheard of.
Yes, it is. And I'll tell you something else. I've noticed in recent years, looking on some of the writers for rock bands. Well, like, of course, we lost Charlie Watts several weeks ago, but Rolling Stone, so many rock bands have always had a bottle of Jack on their rider. I mean, it really is, it's the whiskey of rock stars and those that want to be rock stars worldwide, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, it's such just an iconic brand. I mean, it has been held synonymous with quality throughout history and kind of a little bit of a rebel kick to it too. So yeah, lots of musicians are huge fans, and I'm really glad they are friends of Jack.
Yes, and the history in your own family. Here's something really cool. Lexi became assistant distiller in November of last year, just about a year ago, close to. And you've had how many people, how far back working for Jack Daniels as well in your family?
So I've had over 2 dozen family members work at Jack, past and present, and that started with my great grandfather back in the 40s helping out the Motlows whenever they were buying and selling cattle to live back here on the hill to take care of our slop. That's what my great grandfather helped them do.
Incredible. So as you're growing up, is there some pressure or suggestions or just this desire to like work for Jack Daniels, being around it? I mean, is that what you always wanted to do growing up?
Well, honestly, I can't say that was really the case, just because back then Jack Daniels, it is a really hard job to get. I mean, you're
Right.
pretty much waiting until somebody retires. There's not a lot of turnover here. So, shortly after I graduated college, my great aunt, she was still working down in bottling, and she said they were hiring, and she said, "Come try it out." And I'm like, "Yeah, that sounds awesome." I had just finished a couple classes in college that were geared in the fermentation sciences field. So I learned a lot about the chemistry in wine, but moving on to whiskey, I was very excited. So starting out in quality control, seeing all that goes into getting our whiskey from the barrel to the bottle and sent all around the world, that was absolutely amazing. And just getting to work with several past distillers, I think that really started my pathway up here to the still house.
That's incredible. What a cool thing. And this whiskey we're tasting today was laid down to age just what, about a year or so right before you started?
That's it, right before I started. So it was almost 2 years. So I
Almost two
started
years.
in 13. Yeah, I know it. But, working at the still house, I worked with several guys up there that they actually mashed and distilled this whiskey, and just the pride that is felt among all of Jack Daniels. Well, this is something we are so proud of. It's something we're very excited to share with the world because I mean, it's a damn good whiskey.
It
We're
really is. It is. And as you're sipping this, I mean, in some ways, as you sip this, you can think to yourself, uh, this really reflects your time there at Jack Daniels. You've seen it through many seasons, and you've seen it go from this whiskey from the top of the warehouse to the bottom, right?
absolutely. So seeing that really kind of what we can do, because normally here up until this whiskey, we don't rotate barrels. We don't move them from different spots in the warehouse. Once they get put up in a warehouse, that's where they live. That's the entirety of their life. So this was kind of a change. This is something innovative that they come up with. And I think it really did the whiskey justice just by not getting the overpowering. And I think it's something really cool that we could look into something a little different than we've ever done by moving those barrels just to get the flavors that we're looking for. I will
Definitely.
throw in my husband will get on to me if I forget to mention this just from nerves. I also met him here when I was
Oh,
working in
wow.
quality control. Yeah. So so about 7 years ago we met, became friends, and just got married last year in the middle of the pandemic. So we're keeping it in the
Congratulations.
family.
That's amazing. So you met working. How did was there? Hey, let me buy you a drink after work, or how did that whole first next step happen? How did that happen?
Well, I think we were friends, just had hung out at some friend get-togethers a few times, and then one of our first dates, we actually had 150th anniversary for here at Jack. Nathaniel Ratliff, the artist, came to play, and
Oh,
that was
cool.
one of our first dates. So it was still Jack involved as our first date.
You probably had some Jack flowing at your wedding, didn't you?
That's it. That's it. Even though it was just a little bit of family members due to the pandemic and all that.
Oh, that's
But
so
yeah,
cool.
we still had Jack.
That is so cool. What a great story. The fact that Jack has brought you together with your husband. You've been able to do this the last nearly 10 years. It sounds like a place that you probably want to be for quite some time as well.
Absolutely. I believe in our core values here at Jack, and that's something that I have no trouble standing behind whatsoever.
That is excellent. And again, such a tasty whiskey. I mean, Lots of brown sugar, refined sugars. What do you get? I mean, I've just been tasting this a little while, and I really do like this. I like the fact that it's, Jack. It's older. It just goes a little deeper. What do you get on this? What are the flavors you get on this?
It does. I think the sweetness and complexity of it really just catches me. I think on the aroma of it, you definitely get some molasses, maybe some dried fruits.
Yes.
I don't know if it's just a Southern Tennessee thing, mixing molasses and butter before you put it on a biscuit or something. I feel like it smells like that rich, rich smell. And then on the flavor, I feel like it's just that sweet vanilla caramel on the tongue, but it has that viscosity to really lay across your whole tongue. I absolutely love the mouthfeel of this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The viscosity is lovely. That it's kind of a nice creamy vanilla. It's very just elegant. I mean, it has that kind of those notes of a nice old cognac, other types of spirits. It really is. It's really delicious. And again, only out for just a little while. What are the oldest barrels that are, besides these, that are aging at Jack? Do you have any idea how old the oldest barrels were? They these, or there's some that are older?
We've got some that we are continuing aging that may be just a little older than this. In Jack's day, they had a 10, 12, 14, 18, 21-year-olds. So still in the same age range of that. That's what we would love to do. That is by no means a promise whatsoever. Because if the whiskey is not where we want it to be, we would not release that. But that is something that I would absolutely love to do. And this 10-year-old will be a yearly release. So hopefully next year, about the same time, hopefully we'll have a little bit more to release, because I know this one was a little bit smaller. I think we did around 6,000 cases of it. And that will just be for the States. And then next year, we're hoping to possibly go through the world.
Nice. But only available in the USA. So hopefully, if you're watching elsewhere, find a friend that'll hold you a bottle, or wait until next year. And as you so well said, Lexie, I mean, as you've described, I'm sure to many people, Jack Daniel's is indeed at its origin like a bourbon, but it just goes through that extra step with that charcoal filtration.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So it's literally there, but then it kind of goes a little different direction. Some new flavors come about. Anything about older? I mean, obviously we know what older bourbons taste like, but when it comes to older Tennessee whiskeys with that charcoal filtration, is there anything that you notice on, say, an older Jack that you don't notice on an older bourbon? Is there anything that's there?
I can't really say, because I know with each batch there will be differences, as with each batch of bourbon there will be. I think it's purely subjective into, what my flavor preferences are, plus what the seasons allow us. The really hot and cold summers of Tennessee, summers and winters of Tennessee. It depends. Next year it's going to be a different batch, and I would aim for about the same flavor profile of this, but we'll see. So I think I'm just really, really happy with the flavor on this one, and I think we will continue to do them living mainly in the single barrel home on the top floor of the warehouses where those extreme temperature changes are, and then come down to the slow simmer. I think that really gives it its true vibe.
Yeah, no, and again, the first part of its life is how many years up on the top?
It's around 8 years. I believe it was right under. Yeah.
Right under 8. And then and again, that gets that lots of heat. It's losing a lot of water and getting higher proof. And then you've brought it down to sort of to put the brakes on it, slow simmer to bring about those flavors.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because up in the top floors of our warehouses, my husband, he started his journey here in warehousing. He can easily tell you, up there, it gets well over 120 degrees in the summer and well below freezing in the winter. And that just lets that whiskey go in and out of those wood pores and just gives it that beautiful, rich color and flavor.
Yeah, very nice. 97 proof. So this is a nice proof to sip it at, to enjoy it at. It's really beautifully done. You've done a great job with this whiskey, Lexie, and we'll look forward to having you back on Bourbon Blog to talk about other upcoming releases, some other rare releases in the future. And of course, I'll also say we love the rye that you all do. It's such a nice rye.
Oh, good. Good. I'm a big fan of the rye too. That's what I'm wearing today.
You're wearing a rye
Daniel's
shirt.
Big fan of the rye too. And now
It's
this is
great.
something, like I said, we're all very proud of. You know, we couldn't have done it without every person here at Jack Daniel's. So very excited that you like it. I think there will be several more that love it.
It's delicious. It's delicious and out now. A limited offering only in the U.S. But if for some reason you don't find a bottle this year, look again next year.
Yes.
I'm glad to hear it's going to be a yearly release because it really adds something so special to the brand. It really does.
It does, for sure. It's something really nice. I think I did forget to mention the cartouche around the 10-year-old. Let me see if I can get it on there.
Yeah.
That has actually been recreated from the old bottles that were back in Jack's day.
Oh,
From
wow.
so from the pre-prohibition age-stated whiskeys that we had, they had a very similar cartouche around the 10-year-old age statement. And so we had an artist actually recreate that to kind of mimic and throw back to our history just a little more.
That is so cool. So it really, so the label really reflects that old bottle and the old labeling. And you can see, and if you visit the distillery, which again, you all are open for tours, you can see a lot of old bottlings. You can hear the stories. Of course, as I mentioned to you earlier, I'm a big fan of Frank Sinatra, and I've done a number of tastings at a place called the Purple Room in Palm Springs, California. I've hosted where the Rat Pack met, and they have all the Jacks, and they love Jack there. But it's just it's great to see just so many people that are bourbon enthusiasts that enjoy all sorts of spirits that always come back and say, you know, there's nothing like a good pour of Jack. There really is nothing.
Right. Well, good. I'm glad there's
Thank you, Lexie,
love about it.
so much for all you're doing, and congrats on the 10.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on again. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
You're so welcome, and cheers. Thanks everybody for watching us live on Bourbon Blog. Make sure you like and share this video, and if you began it a little bit late, subscribe to our channel, and just know that you can rewind and watch later. Cheers.